And we are live.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to People, Possibilities, Recruiting, and Retention. We're going to start out with a little bit of audience participation with a poll um, to just get a baseline of where we're at with the participants in terms of what you're doing for recruiting and so forth. But we've been hearing from a lot of people that there are challenges. So we'll just put that question out there about any challenges that, if you feel this is a challenging recruiting environment, let's get a baseline from the participants. While you're having a chance to connect in the poll, I'll take the opportunity to just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm Tina Winner. I'm the managing partner and co founder of Winner Partners. We are a certified woman owned executive search firm based in St. Petersburg, Florida. Um, we have a sweet spot for helping organizations that create economic impact in their communities or increase quality of life. While we work across all different industries because of the experience that my partner and I have had in the executive search business. I have 18 years. This is my 18th year going into 2023 and working across all those different industries. We've had the opportunity to also work within different disciplines, so different functional areas within various industries. I'm proud of the work that we do to both help organizations with their hiring needs, identifying and hiring talent at a senior level, but we also balance that with the candidate side of the equation. Let's face it, people are making life changing decisions as they consider a change in their livelihood. And this is a perfect opportunity for us to talk about things like that today as we dive into people, possibilities, recruiting, and retention. So, just taking a look at the poll here. I don't know if I can actually see the results. And if you haven't had a chance to talk about or to address if you are having challenges, we can definitely look at that. What we are finding, and maybe the reason why you're here today, is because it is a challenging environment in which to hire people today, 2023, and it's been challenging for a while now. So you might have come here in the hopes of learning some new strategies or dusting off some old ones. Because of our content today, I just want you to know that I have brought along my bag of tricks. So this is full of things that I've learned in those 18 years in the executive search business. And we'll pull those out to give you some different strategies around recruiting and retention. So, with Winter Partners, I mentioned our sweet spot with organizations that are creating economic impact or quality of life in their communities. But we do work across multiple industries and we utilize a network of subject matter expert partners. Over the last 3 years, we have not come across an organization that is not having difficulty in hiring. The challenges are far and wide. And I thought we'd just start out by talking about the industry of executive search. And we're just going to focus on executive search, not staffing. And it's important to just level set the discussion because in executive search and the strategies that we're going to talk about regarding recruiting, they come from the process of executive search. We are laser focused on finding highly qualified candidates for executive level roles. It's a high touch process. And that is where I pulled a lot of the things I'm going to share with you today, or maybe things that you're doing in your own recruiting process. So, first, let's just talk about the dollars and cents of recruiting. It's a whole industry. and the executive search industry is thriving. You can look at multiple articles, double digit growth year after year. We'll look at just the largest search firm in the world. It's Korn Ferry. They're a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange with 10,000 employees, and they work in 50 countries. Their 2022 revenue was 2.82 billion. They were up 25% than the previous year. That is indicative of what is happening out in the recruiting world. People need help, and that's probably why you're here today. For smaller shops like us, our business in 2022 was up 97% over 2021. Those are huge numbers. And there are thousands of shops like ours, smaller shops, not on the New York Stock Exchange, that are doing this type of work. And it's costing your organization money as well. You'll see stats out there that show the range of a new hire cost being between $4,000 and $5,000, an investment of $4,000 and $5,000 for organizations that have their own internal recruiting program or HR department that's handling those activities. The cycle runs anywhere from 22 to 32 days when you look at those in-house recruiting programs. And think about the hours that are invested, not only from HR, but the hiring managers and other people that are associated with that recruiting effort. It takes a lot to get a new candidate, a new employee over the line. Measuring this is by how many hours you're investing can help you calculate what the cost is for your specific organization. Me, I think the cost is closer to $10,000 per hire. And if you calculate that to the number of hires that you did last year, the number can really be significant. So let's dissect this a little bit more in looking at the process that we're dragging down from the pyramid of recruiting with executive search at the top. It's focused on C-suite. It's focused on the executive team. There are fewer, so that's why it's at the top of the pyramid. Working on super specific roles, possibly the unicorns that are out there. They're the people within the organization that are also at the top of your organizational chart. It's the fewest number of people. These numbers do not account for the resources that are used throughout your management ranks, director, or your rank and file. Again, the process is high touch, process driven, and built for retention. So look at the resources that you may be using today for your manager level recruits and the bulk of your hires within the employee ranks. You may be using some of the tools that have become available in the last 10 years, like LinkedIn. I got into recruiting when there was no LinkedIn. It was doing a little bit of research within the World Wide Web. That was still evolving. Phone books, there were a lot of other tools, but networks were the most predominant way to identify people. So now in addition to LinkedIn, you have Indeed, you have ZipRecruiter, Glassdoor, Monster, Career Builder. You're probably posting on your own internal company website, associations, local resources. This is where innovation and technology have really made a difference in the industry. You can go and look at people, get some benchmark candidates to help you assess what you're doing from a recruiting standpoint, and also have that opportunity to advertise your roles where you might not have found those candidates previously. From an employer perspective, the commercials that you see on TV for those technology-based assets, they show you how easy it is to find qualified candidates. They're walking in the door and shaking hands within a matter of minutes. It makes it look like you will have your pick of candidates in the marketplace. Fish jumping in the boat, as we like to call it. If it were only that easy. I can tell you when those types of technologies started to come out, my dad said, you better look for another job because I think this is going to replace what you're doing. But what I like to look at it as is just one more tool in that toolkit, one more thing that I would pull out of my bag of tricks accumulated over the years to find candidates. Then you really have to dive into the deep end with evaluating them, getting them interested, and all the other steps that it takes to get candidates over the line. But let's appreciate it for what it does do for you. It's a jumping off point to those actual candidates that are interested. You can look at them, evaluate them, determine if they're a fit. I like to call them feeders because they're feeding you candidates. We're going to just stop for another poll right now and look at what you might be using in terms of those particular resources that are available from a technology standpoint. So poll out there. So what's driving the market today? We like to refer to it as a candidate driven market. The candidates are in the driver's seat. There are multiple opportunities for them to choose from, and you've got to find a way to make yours stand out. Regardless of what the level of talent is that you're seeking for your organization, some of the basic things that you want to think about in terms of your process is making sure that you have an interview process in place, and your interview process should roll right into the hiring process. Your requirements, drug screens, background checks, etc. These are the bare minimums to getting people in the door and started at your organization. But there's a whole other plan involved on the front end. In today's candidate driven marketplace, statistics show that there are 2 jobs for every unemployed person in the market. And oftentimes you're not looking for that unemployed person. You're looking for the passive candidate, the ones that are kind of heads down working and may be attracted to a new role. So to win in this candidate driven marketplace, your focus should be on creating a positive candidate experience. That's something that you can control. You will be reminded of the candidate driven marketplace by things that you hear in the news and things that you see through your associations that you're involved in, through doing research on how to recruit people, the new normal, the quiet quitting, the great resignation. We've been in a state of disruption in the workplace for over 3 years. Some of this is going to stay, some of it will shake out and smooth out. And eventually the tables will shift where there will be less jobs than there are workers. But in the meantime, get comfortable with the terms that are not going away, and they need to be addressed within your organization as you're creating a candidate experience. Work-life balance, company culture, flexibility, engagement, mission, and values. Those are things that people are looking for as they consider a new opportunity. So there is a changing narrative. Earlier, I mentioned that candidates are oftentimes making those life-changing decisions when they're looking at a new opportunity. It's serious business. You may be hiring on a daily basis, but we're not changing jobs on a daily basis. People take it very seriously, and there are a lot of factors at play. They're looking to you to ensure that you are taking them and the process that they're going through seriously. Having this positive candidate experience, it's paramount. You're perpetuating your organization's brand from the first interaction that you have with them, whether they're reading an ad that you placed, through a phone call to your organization, an email, it all matters. Think about how much time and money that you're spending on your organization's traditional marketing efforts to develop a brand for clients. But who's going to take care of those clients? It's going to be those employees. So let's make sure that your brand is in effect throughout the organization and you're invested in the potential hires. The organizations that are getting it right are focused on candidate attraction. It's not enough to just recruit. Everyone's doing that. You're in a sea of people that have opportunities and they're there to promote them. So how are you attracting candidates? Is your game elevated enough to attract the very best? They're counting. They're taking notes from that first interaction. How serious are you about the hiring process? Are you serious enough to make sure that every applicant receives a touch point? How about receives a touch point within 15 minutes? We recently did a search where it is a very high turnover industry in the area of senior living and uh, and childcare. They're combination organization, faith based, and we were looking for an executive director. And as we were going through those interviews, it became so apparent that they are in one of the most competitive fields right now for talent. And they are texting candidates within 15 minutes so that they know that, hey, your candidacy matters to me. And I want to prove that from my first interaction. So, are you evaluating the time that people are committing to the process when they apply? We know that there's other technology at play. Perhaps you have an applicant tracking system and you're helping, and that's helping you to make decisions. But it can't help you make decisions about your brand. This is where the ATS becomes the tool. Let it help you from a technology standpoint. Candidate attraction runs throughout your organization. Let's not think about HR just being the hiring entity within your organization. It's essential that everybody becomes a part of it, and the candidate attraction piece is perpetuated throughout the organization. Who better than to be a walking, talking billboard for your organization than those employees that are running the operation on a daily basis? We're going to cover that more when we get to retention, but as candidate experience is important for the candidate that you hire, it's also important for those that you're not hiring. You may have one or two positions, but along the way, you're going to be talking to a number of people who don't make it through your door. And those are the ones who are going to be evaluating the process that they went through, that candidate experience. It's a numbers game. There are more of them that aren't coming in your door, but they had the experience with you. And when they talk about it, they can relate that they weren't hired for whatever reason. The timing wasn't right. They didn't bring a requisite skill set. But you have the opportunity to create that great candidate experience, and they can talk about that. They'll remember how they were treated during the recruitment process. That's your candidate experience. That's the brand that they're taking about your organization. So we're going to talk about some of the aspects of the candidate experience. These are bare minimum requirements of the candidate experience. When I talked about that bag of tricks, we have the handy dandy book of candidate experience. It's big. There's a lot of it. There's a lot that goes in there because of your specific organization or your industry. There will be a lot more layers. So we're just going to touch on the bare minimums of what you should be thinking about in terms of your candidate experience. Are you checking the boxes here? So first and foremost, communication. In many areas of our business, we're continuing to talk about communication and how important it is. Make an effort to respond to every candidate, every applicant. No ghosting here. Sometimes it's difficult to convey news that we know people don't want to hear. You're not the candidate. You're not our pick. They want to know. Setting expectations and being able to close that loop, let them know where they stand in the process. Build tools to help you with those conversations or those communications. Templates are great. It keeps people in line with things that they should or shouldn't say. And it's a way to make it easier, build them for each of the roles that you're going to market with. Or if there's some one that you can use and tailor it to each role that you're recruiting for, it will help. Use technology, use the ATS where it makes sense for communication. If you have a CRM, that's another avenue that you could use to communicate with your candidates and applicants. Tracking to make sure that you're checking the box that each candidate has had a touch point. Spreadsheets are a great way to do that. Good old Outlook and some Microsoft tools are also things that you can utilize. Communication is key. How long is your process? When was the last time you evaluated how long, how many steps are involved in your time to hire? How many interviews should a candidate expect? Don't make your process and the time that it takes a barrier to entry in your organization. Again, ensure your applicant process is user friendly and accessible. If it's something where you're using technology or your ATS, have you tested it on a phone, a tablet? Review it quarterly. Again, the world's changing. Let's make sure that we're changing with it. Is it built for candidate attraction? Or is it just communicating facts and figures? Think about how your brand is appearing as you are having candidates go through that applicant process. Also, do good front end work with your hiring managers. Develop a process if you don't have one for information gathering from hiring managers. World's changing. What do you need as the world has changed? Has the position changed? Maybe one that is core to your essential functions within your organization. Have you reviewed the job description? Does it read with inclusive language? Have current employees take a look at the job description. There may be a big gap in the responsibilities and role that you may have missed because it's a job description that's worked over the years. Let's look at it and make sure that it is working in today's environment. Be realistic about the compensation expectations. Many of you might have grades or salary bands. Are they realistic for this position? Is there wiggle room? Do you have a area where you could stretch for highly qualified candidates? Or do you have a base that you might be able to go a little bit lower to give somebody with potential an opportunity to come in and get them into your system to continue to develop them if they might be missing a piece or two, but worth it. And don't waste candidates' times or your hiring manager or anyone within your organization. Don't waste the time if you can't get there from a compensation perspective. If there is wiggle room, let's try and adjust. But if not, move on to something that may be more of a fit and ensure that you are making the candidate experience paramount. Again, technology is your friend and use it as a qualifier for candidates with some qualifying questions. Again, let's shorten the time to hire and get candidates moved into the interview process faster by utilizing some of the technology assets that we have for qualifying candidates in a short amount of time. How about databases where you're managing candidates that you've already seen? They weren't a fit, it didn't work out, they had another offer. Are you going back? Who's going back to the well? This is kind of your alumni of applicants. And also, you may have people that have left your organization. Are you staying in touch? Does anybody have one that made it back on a callback? We heard this week that there were a number of people that would be hitting the market in terms of employee layoffs. Two very innovative companies, Salesforce and Amazon, both announced significant employee layoffs. 28,000 people between two companies in 1 week. They're some of our most innovative companies in the world, and they did not find a way to get creative and keep their employees. Think about that when you might be facing a similar scenario. Is there a way to keep part-time employees? Better to keep the employees that you have rather than going to market and spending the dollars to bring in new employees. Again, working with hiring managers, set non-negotiables on qualifications and requirements for the role. Where is there a little bit of room to move within there? Is a degree really necessary for this position? Open yourself up to being able to bring in as many people within the candidate pool as you can. It's also helpful to have benchmarks. We talked about the tools that we have through some of the solutions from a technology standpoint in the way of LinkedIn and Indeed. There are ways to go out there and look at backgrounds of employees. Find your benchmark and then measure candidates and applicants against that to get closer and shorten your time to hire. Set a timeline and manage to it. Don't have a recruiting process that kind of drags on. Have an end in mind when you want to have that person in place and build your process around that. When you get to the interview stage, you want to have an interview process that continues to build that candidate experience and get people through in a timely process. Try and consolidate multiple interviews. If you're one of those organizations that does tend to get into analysis paralysis, this person needs to meet with one other ones. Try and consolidate those multiple interview scenarios. Can you live with a maximum of 4 interviews? See where you can shorten that length of time. Use structured interviews. Helps to eliminate bias. Behavior-based interviews, those are a technique that we use, especially on the initial interviews. Past performance is always the best indicator of future success. So utilize that type of interview to rule in and rule out candidates. For the people that are doing the interviews, make sure that they have the right tools. Do they have developed questions? Again, to eliminate bias and people going off on a tangent with an interview process. Provide developed questions that they can use repeatedly. Make assignments so that people don't have to answer the same questions as they go through multiple interviews. Nothing more frustrating than answering the same question 5 times during an interview day at an organization. Assign the questions with different people who will have a touch point with that candidate and make good use of the time. Have a way to record and rate the answers for each of the candidates. It's a way to build in a data-driven process, eliminate, oh, my gut didn't feel good about that person. Really help them manage how they're evaluating candidates before they get to the gut check. Train your hiring managers. They are at the forefront. They are also going to be the touch point when the person lands within your organization. Make sure that they understand what you're trying to accomplish and keep to the schedule. Nothing worse than getting into one of those 5 interview days within an organization and you anticipated being there for 2 hours and you ended up spending 4 hours. Be mindful of their time and respectful of the time that they've invested to come and meet you and learn more. Develop a feedback loop. As you have multiple interviewers, they go through their rankings, bring them together and talk about the feedback. This is a good opportunity for them to provide some of that gut check about how they felt with the cultural match, attitude, and other soft skills about the candidates. Assign a point person to communicate that feedback loop with the candidate whenever possible, someone to shepherd them through the process. This is also an effective use of the people that you're employing within your own interview team, the hiring managers, the department managers, etc. The expectations that you set will help that process go smoothly. We're big fans of setting expectations for initial interviews. We typically have a 30-minute call that's dedicated to not only helping candidates understand who will be involved in the interview process, but also the topics that will be covered, not specific questions, but the areas of focus. And also just some general tips and tactics for Zoom interviews, or if it's an in-person interview, just good reminders. People aren't typically interviewing on a daily basis. So help them make you look good by going through some of the expectations of the interviews. Eliminate surprises wherever you can. Time well spent. And then train people to sell the candidate on the opportunity. We know that you're evaluating the candidates, but they are evaluating you too. So get into a habit of selling the organization, selling the department, selling the hiring manager throughout your ecosystem of the recruiting process. Hiring is not just the responsibility of HR, it's everyone's responsibility. And just assume that each candidate is going to have multiple offers and you want yours to stand out. You've got to be selling, always be selling. ABS. Reminder about closing the loops. No ghosting, provide the feedback, talk about what next steps are, anticipate what the timeline is that you're managing to, so that they understand what the next step is and when that will happen. Also, ask them for feedback. Reserve the right to get better. Take the feedback that they will share with you on what's happened through the interview process, and you can incorporate that as you strive to make that candidate experience one that is memorable. Other ways that you can support the effort is to build a talent pipeline. It's just as important as sales pipelines. Now you're just looking for ways to find candidates and do it quickly when there is a need within your organizations. Help your hiring managers with developing their connections and networks. Most times they have an industry or a functional expertise, and they may be attending events or conferences or participating in speaking engagements, affinity groups. Talk with them about how to keep an eye for talent. Think about incorporating a metric for hiring managers for those networks and connections to keep those fresh. As you are hiring managers, hire leaders with a passion for that, ones that like to mentor, ones that like to teach. You might have some applicants that are also adjunct professors. They kind of go to the top of the list. You know that they have an affinity for it. So bolt on to that. How creative are you getting with your talent pipeline? And what are the parameters in which you can move? Those are things that you'll want to assess with your organization. How creative can you get? But it starts with setting a strategy for what your current needs are and then for future needs. So you can start to predict, you can start to plan for any future hiring needs. Utilize resources that are at your disposal. There are workforce organizations that are local, your city, county, state, you may find them. There are second chance hiring initiatives for people that were formerly incarcerated. As we're getting creative, what are the parameters in which you can operate? That is another opportunity for you to fill your talent pipeline. The seasoned employees, sometimes we don't want to bring people in because they don't have enough runway. They're only going to work for 2 or 3 more years. Take advantage of the experience that they're bringing to the table. They usually come with less problems. They are they're already deep in their experience. What is the appetite for getting creative there? If you're on the fence, are you hiring for attitude and training for skills? Again, what are those parameters in which you can work to fill your hiring needs? And what's the latitude with your hiring managers and with your organizations? Southwest Airlines is really where that came. Hire for attitude and train for skill. Obviously, you can't hire for attitude and then expect them to be doing brain surgery. But again, if there is a little bit of latitude there and you might be on the fence, if that person comes with a positive attitude, you feel like they're a good cultural match, and the soft skills are there, why not take a chance and incorporate that into your overall deciding factor? Employee referral programs, another way to build goodwill with existing employees. Remember, they're your billboard. Um, Statistics show that a referral from a current employee is 18% more likely to be hired than a traditional applicant. So utilize that employee network to build your talent pipeline. And it's only going to work if you set it up right. So again, let's talk about process. Make sure that you're communicating. Again, communication is key. Communicate the expectations with your employees. Not every referral is going to be a good one. So get them to understand what a good referral looks like, and help them help you. Communicate updates as appropriate. As much as you can, let them know we chatted with your friend, and thank them for that referral. And then close the loop. This wasn't the right time, but we appreciate you referring John Smith, and look forward to any other friends that you might have that might be interested in our organization. Brand strengthening. So, last point here. We talked about your marketing efforts and how you're branding for clients. Again, make sure your brand is strong for candidates. Incorporate candidate attraction into those marketing efforts and your messaging. If there's an opportunity to highlight employee wins or events, activities, things that are showing and promoting your company culture, throw those on social media. People like to see smiles on people's face as they're looking at pictures. Help to build those employee branding strategies with your hiring managers and throughout the ecosystem. So, again, just to recap, recruiting takeaways as we are in 2023. And we learn candidates are in the driver's seat. So we need to adjust the narrative. Let's work on candidate and talent attraction. Let's make our opportunity, our organization stand out amongst the many choices that people have. Dominate with your candidate experience. This is your way to differentiate. Even if people don't get hired, let them walk away with a smile on their face and say, hey, this organization knows how to treat people. Communication is key. It's simple. Feedback is free. It's something we say all the time. I know there are certain things and parameters that you want to utilize and employ when you're providing feedback to candidates or applicants, but at least give them a touch point to let them know it's yes, we're moving forward, or it's a no-go, but thank you for your time. We appreciate it. Build that great employer brand, marketing, not just for sales, and stay fluid in this evolving talent market. Think outside the box. Again, how far can you be flexible within some of those different ways to build a talent pipeline? So we're a little over halftime for our recruiting piece. I'm going to pop over here, see if there are any questions regarding recruiting, talent attraction. Okay. So we're going to move on to retention. And we're going to start with the mindset of empathy and understanding. In 2020, the world changed. and it's going to continue to evolve. The pandemic caused disruption in just about every single industry. It forced us to make changes professionally based on what was happening with us personally. And it's still not completely back to normal. We saw budgets that were slashed, job cuts, fear, uncertainty, adaptation to a new normal. And those who didn't adapt moved towards the great resignation. The last few years have definitely been a roller coaster. And think about the ways that you asked your employees to adapt. Hiring freezes, staff reductions, pay cuts, funding cuts, work from home, even though your kids are at home and not at school, and maybe your spouse is there and there's no home office, but be productive. It's a lot. So it's important to recognize and consider that there has been a lot going on with your employees. So start from that point of empathy and understanding. You and your people have been dealing with a lot of things that have been out of whack, from schools to daycare. Your model of efficiency was spinning, and we're still not back to where we were. Add in the additional uncertainties of where we are right now with inflation, recession, the thousands of people that are entering the job market that were not thinking about it. Come from a point of empathy and understanding when you're thinking about employee retention. Your employees have changed. The world's changed. So, along with the empathy and understanding, you want to recognize and appreciate that your employee that you had that's been there since 2019 is not the same. Taking into account all the things that we talked about in the changing world, what your employees are interested in may be different. So let's think about how we keep the employees that we have. How do we help people want to stay beyond the paycheck? It takes a commitment to employee engagement. What's employee engagement? Simply, it is the emotional commitment for the employee has to the organization and its goals. Again, going beyond the paycheck, it's that emotional commitment that your employee has with the organization. That emotional commitment means engaged employees actually care about the work that they're doing and the organization. And isn't that what we want at the end of the day? Someone that's emotionally committed because they care. So when organizations ignore employee engagement, it's threatening to their survival. It's important. So when we talked about recruiting, we changed the narrative to candidate attraction through candidate experience. Same thing here. We're going to look at employee engagement through the employee experience. Again, we're going to cover some of the bare minimum requirements related to employee engagement from our big book, and how we start. So you have a new employee. How do you handle that? How do you make sure that you're starting with a culture of engagement from day one? Onboarding for success. Build an onboarding plan. If you don't have one, set up for success on day one. Employee orientation. Build the process. Continue with that employer brand that you navigated through with your candidate experience in the recruitment process. Have a checklist. Leave nothing to chance. A process is no better if you do not incorporate a way to account for and ensure that it is being followed. Checklists are great. Start the orientation with talking about company culture. Make sure that your new people on the ground understand and recognize what you've built from a corporate culture, company culture. Help them to understand what your mission, vision, and values are, and then regularly communicate that. We can't think that people understand that on day one and they remember it on day 365. Communicate it. often and in bite-sized, consumable, simplistic, memorable answers. What's the mission? What's that mean? Why does your organization exist? That's your mission. The vision. What does your organization want to be? And values. What's important to the organization? Keep it simple. Then move on to the skills-based orientation of your onboarding. Designate a point person, just like we talked about having a point person with the recruiting process. Give them a buddy. Train your point person. Don't make assumptions that they are on board with what your thought process is for the onboarding process. Make sure that they understand their role and what they are looking to deliver within the process. It helps to also build engagement with that existing employee. They get to participate in making sure that the person is set up for success. Set up check-ins with the hiring managers and department managers. Again, communication is key. Structure regular team check-ins and also one-on-ones. These don't have to be long. They don't have to be every week. Stand-up meetings. We love to say stand-up meetings, no more than 15 minutes with an agenda. We're going to cover things, opportunity for me to give you feedback and vice versa, and move on. Employees want to have an opportunity to have a voice. Set expectations for the goals and objectives, both with new employees and your existing ones. Provide feedback and prioritize positive feedback. Find a way and help your hiring managers also find a way to provide that positive feedback once a week at a minimum. Communicate what's happening with the company, the outlook, what's new. You've invested in them, they've invested in you. Now take the opportunity to provide some feedback on a regular basis. Training and development. This doesn't have to be a formal plan. It can be a variety of training opportunities, whether it's skills-based communication. Again, employ the 15-minute stand-up meeting. Think consumable, how people are digesting information and retaining it. For the more formal things, invest in professional development. Monitor your talent for succession planning needs. Who's developing? Who will you be able to put into your talent pipeline as you know you will be having additional hiring needs? Who's ready to move up? Those are ways that the communication can help you. Who's ready? Who wants it? Who is really hungry for it? And provide feedback on performance, not just at annual reviews, but on a regular basis. So if people are not operating at the level that you expect them, it's not a surprise when you come to performance reviews if you're having that regular communication. And also give them the opportunity to talk about their goals. Employee recognition. Do employees have a way to know how well they're doing? Are the objectives that you have, do they have goals? You might not have goals throughout the organization. Have a target for them to shoot towards. Objectives that have quantifiable metrics. Use recognition for morale boosting and not just monitoring performance. If somebody went above and beyond, give them a shout out. Educate them on how they could add value to the organization. Top-down approach. Managers lead recognition efforts. Again, work with your managers on how they can continue to perpetuate that within their departments. There are all types of employee recognition. It can be monetary, but it can also be social. The shout outs, have rewards programs to build for a day off, for example. Managers, let's talk about managers. They are your first line of retention. And they're also the number one reason why an employee may leave the organization. So in your hiring process, make sure you're hiring coaching managers, Those that foster a team environment, they're able to get the best from their team. They know their strengths and play towards those. They're able to set goals, empower their people with additional responsibilities. They're strong communicators and active listeners. Being able to communicate is just as important as listening. And recognize if they're treating employees as well as you do clients. Also, it's important as managers or coaches that the employees have a what's in it for me factor. As they are communicating goals, objectives, they want to know how it impacts them. So build that in and help your managers be able to convey that with their employees. For the managers that you have that might be missing some of those elements, invest in coaching and training if needed. It's going to serve you well in the long run. The necessary evil of comp and benefits. Let's face it, employees are there to earn. So you want to make sure that you are reviewing your compensation and benefits on a regular basis. This is rarely the dominating reason why employees leave, but that doesn't give you the onus to not pay attention to what's happening in the marketplace. So review it, baseline it with some of your competitors as you're doing your recruiting efforts. Ask about the compensation at the other organizations and ensure that your recruiting efforts are factoring in what the market is bearing from a cash compensation perspective. You can purchase comp surveys, but the minute that you buy one, it is out of date. It's changing. There's a changing market. You want to make sure that your ear is to the ground on what's happening from compensation in the market and in your industries. From a benefits perspective, healthcare is the number one issue out there right now. From a cost perspective, we have seen plans as people are changing jobs where the delta for a family plan is $20,000 and above, moving from one to another. Take a look at where you are from a healthcare plan perspective. It's a big undertaking, but ensure that you are looking at all facets of your healthcare plan on an annual basis. Utilize things that don't have such a high cost factor, like flexibility, work life balance. Recognizing that work from home is sometimes a tough subject. There are just some jobs you cannot do from home. Is a hybrid scenario in your purview? It might not always be the answer. Everything that we're working on right now, from the opportunities at Winter Partners, it is an in the office, in the building, and that is going to be more of what we're seeing. Just letting you know, it is a clip from what's happening in the industry. You can look as recently as this week with Disney saying they want people in the office 4 days a week, Starbucks corporate. And the banks will be the next one. And they're a main driver in what happens in the overall economy. So, how are you responding to that? If that's not an option, what are your parameters for flexibility? Are there childcare options that you can help with? Is there a possibility to bring the child to work? I know that's not the best case scenario, but think about how creative you can get. How flexible are you? And then, lastly, is investing in your employees' careers, empowering them with tools to own their own career continuum through intentional behaviors. This is really training people for the next level. And they might not stay there, but it's okay. You want to develop your people. This is a way to continue to promote employee engagement by being invested in how they are developing. It's a super strong statement, but it is the difference in keeping employees or developing leaders or additional professionals within your organization. This is the number two reason why people leave an organization. No opportunities for growth. Think about it from the standpoint not of career promotion if you help people with developing their skill sets. Think of it as career progression. How do you at least get 1 degree better? Help your employees by understanding how to self assess their skill set and strengths and coach them to identify their strengths. We're not always great at being able to identify what our superpowers are. Sometimes you need an outsider perspective to come in and help you identify those. Use, in addition to those self assessments, structured assessments. There's a ton of them out there, DISC, Strength Finders, etc. Give them some of the tools. Those are small cost items that can go a long way with helping people understand who they are, how they tick, and where their strengths are. Help them discover their passions. What are they passionate about? Comes through conversation. Define their personal goals. They may have a goal that you haven't tapped into. Let's find out what they are. Help them develop their personal brand. Who are they? How are they perceived? Help them understand how they may be able to tweak a few behaviors so that they are better represented about what they want to do within their career, within their department. Refine communication skills that evoke confidence. Help them be able to articulate things better. Teach networking and the power of connections, and reinforce with messaging about production and results, because at the end of the day, they're there to work. So while you're helping them get through these steps, it's also helpful to reinforce that there's no better way for them to show how great and valuable they are through production and through results. They matter. Encourage the use of mentoring and mentees throughout your organization. It builds a pipeline of doers who want to leverage their strengths where you might have a need, and you can utilize them temporarily or encourage them to take on a project. Retention. Takeaways: onboarding for success. Process matters. Communication is key in just about everything that you're doing within your organization. Can we say this enough? Build a culture of training and development, either formally or informally. Think about those 15-minute stand-ups. Employee recognition. There are ways to do this outside of dollars. Figure them out. What's important? Hire for a manager coach. Hire those managers that are coaches and that can build a lineup, capitalize on strength, know how to deploy resources, and foster an environment of growth and develop their team. Review your comp and bennies, necessary evil, and invest and empower. This can be your number one differentiator in building employee engagement and experience. Remember, if you're not taking care of your employees, someone else will. Any questions for anything we covered today? Well, I appreciate your time and attention, and there are many pieces to this process. If I can be helpful to you in any way, please let me know. I'm happy and welcome the opportunity to talk with you further. Thank you.